Shivchi kamayim libeh Enoichach b'nei Hashem Shivchi kamayim libeh Enoichach b'nei Hashem Shivchi kamayim libeh V'noichach b'nei Hashem Shivchi kamayim libeh V'noichach b'nei Hashem Shivchi kamayim libeh V'noichach b'nei Hashem שיבכה כמים לבך נויגך פני השם שיבכה כמים לבך נויגך פני השם שיבכה כמים לבך נויגך פני השם
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יקקה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יקקה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to this week's Torah study. This is Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and today we're going to be continuing in Leviticus chapter 18. We'll finish it off today, YaHWeH, and then we can move on next time to chapter 19. So let's see, what do we want to start off by talking about? You know, I was watching YouTube videos earlier this week, and there's a certain type of YouTube video, and you see it all over the internet, actually on Facebook, on Instagram, and it's people, you know, enjoying the good life, or people promoting a certain style of life. So I'll give you one example. I saw a video, or I watched a channel where it's this guy, he's a lawyer. I think he owns a chain of like ambulance chaser lawyer branches, meaning personal injury, right? And every one of his videos on YouTube, every one of his shorts is him, just about every one of his shorts is him taking his family onto their private jet, the Cirrus personal jet. I think it's called the JR-50 or something like that. When I did my flight training, we trained in Cirrus SR-20s and SR-22s, so I'm a big fan of Cirrus. But anyway, the Cirrus, taking his family on the Cirrus jet, and he's like dressed really nice. He has like a nice like khaki pants and a blue shirt on, and you know, everyone looks like so happy, and you know, they're just enjoying the good life, flying their Cirrus jet from one place to another. And then there was another channel that I watched recently, which was this guy, I think he calls himself the Nomadic Investor or something like that. And he's in Tbilisi, Georgia, and examining all the properties that he's bought and talking about how much they've made money here and made money there and made money elsewhere. And I guess he's trying to sell, I don't know what he sells exactly. Sells advice. I guess he sells investments, or also advice on how to become a nomadic investor, how to like leave your country of origin and all this kind of stuff. And what these people are trying to sell is exactly what the book of Ecclesiastes warns against. And I'll get to that in a second. But essentially what they're trying to sell is, okay, I mean, the first guy is not trying to sell. He's just a narcissist, I think, just trying to show off what a great life he has. Is if we're going to believe that just because he has, you know, a jet and dresses nicely and has a bunch of law firm branches, that he necessarily has a great life. That's just what he shows to the camera. But so he's really trying to sell himself, I guess. He's just a narcissist. And the second guy is actually trying to sell investments, but he also seems to be kind of a narcissist. I mean, he just runs around from place to place, you know, buying properties, waiting for them to go up, developing them, you know, and his whole focus is on money, how to make returns on your investment. And let me just point out by saying there's nothing wrong with having a parnassah. There's nothing wrong with having a living and making money and enjoying the beauty of this earth, whether it's a nice house or even the beautiful things that human beings make, a nice car, all of this kind of stuff. But when that becomes the reason for your existence, then it becomes a problem, and it violates everything that King Solomon tries to teach us in the book of Ecclesiastes. So I'll get to that in a second. But what I want to say is that what the book of Ecclesiastes speaks about, it speaks about a lot of things, but one of the things it speaks about is how King Solomon felt this emptiness in his life, this longing that he could never, ever fulfill. And he tried all kinds of different ways to fulfill it. And some of those ways were physical. I don't know if I call them pleasures, but because that already implies like, you know, sex and drinking and stuff like that, but physical acquisitions. And he found that did not satisfy this longing, this emptiness. And so when we watch these people on YouTube, they are trying to convince, I got to plug it. Shoot. They're trying to convince us, and maybe even more so, they're trying to convince themselves that they have the keys to the Garden of Eden, that they've found the key to happiness and pleasure. Shabbat shalom, everybody. That they found the happiness, the keys to happiness and pleasure in this life, whether it is owning a bunch of law firm branches and driving around or riding around with your family in your personal jet that you own and you fly yourself, or whether it is going around the world, buying properties and investing in those properties and becoming very rich off of those properties. They're trying to sell the idea to others and to themselves that they've found the key to the Garden of Eden, that they've found the way to get rid of this, what they call existential angst, this longing that we all have, this feeling of emptiness that we all have as human beings, this feeling of we're not there, we miss, something is missing, we always need to be searching. So they sell the idea that they found the answers to that search, and that it's always in material possessions, it's always in material gains. And this is fake. This is absolutely fake. Again, I'm not against having material possessions. I appreciate a nice house, I appreciate a nice car, I appreciate all of those things. But the question is, how do you do it? Do you do it morally? Do you do it ethically? Do you make your living by helping other people, by doing an honest day's living? And Ecclesiastes also speaks about that. Or do you do it with your first goal in mind, where your first goal in mind is just profit, is making money, and everything else, such as ethics, is secondary. So if your ethics is primary, okay, I do a good job for people, okay, whatever it is, I install windows for people, but I do a good, honest day's work and I get paid for my work that I do, that's the right way to go about things. But if it's I need to make a profit, and I don't care if what I do to make a profit, if that means using the courts to get some little old lady out of their house and build an apartment building there, then the ethics are secondary to the profits. I'm going to need to, unfortunately, just plug in for a second. So let's hold on to that thought for 1 second. I won't disconnect or anything, but I just gotta get my plug, and we'll continue. Hold on 1 second. In the meantime, think about that for a minute, as one of my favorite YouTube channel guys always says. We'll be right back. Okay, I think we're plugged in. All right, we're back. I'm contradicting Jewish stereotypes. So these people are lying when they present on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook that they've found the key to happiness in life, and that key to happiness is some kind of material success. And it's so easy to fall into that trap, because we are all, in this world that we live in, we're all, in a sense, desperate. We want so badly to find that key to happiness. And so it's because we're physical creatures, and because we're children, we're grown-up children essentially, and children don't have wisdom or depth of knowledge or understanding of the world. We learn from a very early age. We didn't learn from a very early age. Our first look at the world, our first superficial look at the world, taught us that physical satisfaction or physical gratification is the key to the Garden of Eden. So when we were little kids, we wanted the ice cream, we wanted the candy, we wanted the toy, we wanted to whatever we wanted at that moment. Children are very physical creatures. They don't have wisdom yet, right? The less wisdom you have, you can even say that it's kind of a you can look at it on a spectrum or on a sliding scale. The less wisdom you have, the more you see the physical aspects of this world, and the less you see the spiritual aspects of this world. The more wisdom you have, the less you see the physical aspects of the world. It doesn't mean you don't appreciate them. The physical aspects of this world are beautiful when appreciated in the correct way. A mountain, a valley, even, as I said, even a beautifully made car, something that's beautifully crafted, a beautifully made house. These are all the work of God through the hands of man. But we can only appreciate the physical when we put it in its correct perspective. The physical in and of itself is not going to assuage, is that the right, am I saying that right? It's not going to satisfy that yearning, that emptiness that we all have in life. So the more wisdom we gain in life, the more we put physical possessions and success in its place, not completely ignore them. We're not, as followers of Torah and as followers of YaHWeH, we're not ascetics, but we put it in its correct perspective, that it only has meaning when it is subordinate, or whether it is done in accordance with the spiritual aspects of our existence. So again, the example would be, I work hard, I am honest with my customers, I earn my money, and I take that money and buy a nice house with it. Now, that's a good feeling, okay? But I screw over little old ladies by, convincing them that they need to invest in, elephant stampede insurance when there aren't elephants for 3,000 miles away. And now I become a millionaire, multimillionaire from that, and I buy that same nice house and I buy that same car. It's a very bad feeling. It's a very empty feeling. You're not going to sleep well at night, ultimately. So all of these people are trying to, they themselves have never matured. They've never grown out of their childish, their infantile, their immature view of the earth, of the world, of our life, that everything can be satisfied through physical possessions. And they appeal to other people who either have also never grown out of it, or on various stages of growing out of that perspective on the world and achieving wisdom. So when I see the guy flying around in his Cirrus jet that he pilots himself, that he bought with his law firms, which are ambulance chaser law firms, it's very easy, right? It's almost like a drug addict seeing a drug, or an alcoholic seeing a glass of alcohol, or a person with an eating disorder seeing a piece of chocolate cake, right? It's very easy for all of us to just say, wow, look at what a great life that guy is living. He has the ideal life. I'm jealous. I want to be like him. By the way, these people do it to make you jealous, because they're playing on the trick, right? They want you to be jealous, and they do it by playing on this little trick, this immaturity that we all have, that their lifestyle, that physical possessions alone are the key to the Garden of Eden. Okay? But they're not. The guy that goes to Tbilisi, Georgia, and invests in a whole bunch of properties, and then just runs around and developing on those properties without any respect for, am I making good housing for people? Am I building something worthwhile? But again, ethical concerns are secondary, and profit is primary. By the way, profit is primary really describes the entire United States of America and some of the West, not all of the West, but specifically the United States of America. Everything in the United States of America is secondary to profit. Profit is the god, almost literally, of the United States of America. But I don't want to go down that route right now. Okay? So they're selling us a lie. They're appealing to our lack of wisdom, which we all have, because we're all on a path towards wisdom. And they are basically putting candy in front of a baby. They're putting a cup of alcohol in front of an alcoholic. They're putting chocolate cake in front of a person with an eating disorder, they're putting drugs in front of a drug addict, because we are all that to a certain degree, right? We are all childish and lack wisdom to a certain degree, and they're playing on that to sell us a lie that they have found the key to the Garden of Eden, and they want to show it to us, whether it's for profit, as the nomadic investor, or whatever his name is, wants to actually sell stuff, or whether it's for their own narcissism, as the guy who rides around in his personal Cirrus jet, tries to show off and dresses really nice, and he has like these perfect looking kids, and they go to like, oh, today we're flying the Cirrus jet to Costa Rica to have a hamburger at such and such place. He's selling he's a narcissist. Okay. And so let's look at a bit at Ecclesiastes and see what's really going on here, because King Solomon was indeed the wisest of all men in the history of humanity. I really believe he was. And as I've said for years, I believe that Ecclesiastes is the greatest work of philosophy in the history of humanity. Hands down. Hands down. Okay, and we know, I'll just read the English, and then I'll look at the English, at the Hebrew. So this is the NIV translation, and it starts off in Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Maybe I should post it up here. There we go. Okay. So the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem: meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Solomon starts off Ecclesiastes by expressing this existential angst, this feeling of longing, this feeling of never being there. It doesn't matter whether you're 10 years old or 30 years old or 70 years old. We all have this feeling of, I'm not there yet. I haven't made it. There's something else in this world that I have to seek after. This feeling of emptiness, this feeling of being a stranger on this planet, of what am I doing here? I don't really feel like I fit in here at all. I feel like a stranger in a strange land. There must be a mistake. God put me in this world. Why? I can't figure out why. It must be a mistake. There must have been a mix-up. I must have been destined for a different planet, but he put me here because I just don't fit in here at all. Something is missing. And it doesn't matter. So we run around this world looking for the ways to assuage, to pacify that longing. And we do all kinds of things. It could be travel to different places. I've done that. And I love traveling, don't get me wrong. But I've done it in the past as a way to, I'm looking for the path back to the Garden of Eden. Okay. I went to Morocco. I went to Tunisia. I've been in about 30 countries, always looking for the entrance back to the Garden of Eden and never finding it. And then realizing, my God, I could travel another 100 countries. I won't find the entrance to the Garden of Eden. Even if I go to Iraq, where they believe the Garden of Eden was, I won't find the entrance to the Garden of Eden, because, let's take a little sidetrack, Genesis chapter 3. So when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, where we could assume they had that feeling of satisfaction, they had that feeling of completeness, they had that feeling of fulfillment. They were one with God at that point, but they were too immature to appreciate what they had. They were like children so they did stupid things like children do, and then they got into trouble. And we as humanity have spent the past thousands of years, however many, trying to get back to the Garden of Eden. Get back to the garden. Isn't there a song, Get Back to the Garden, or something like that? So when YaHWeH threw Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden, let me find it here. Right here. So YaHWeH made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. And YaHWeH, Elohim, said, the man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. So when we work our way around to Genesis, we'll talk a lot about this, okay? You cannot be both how can we say, you cannot be both, I don't want to use the word evil, that's too loaded a word, but okay, I don't want to go into this now. When we get back to Genesis, we'll talk about it. Anyway, let me go on. So YaHWeH, God, banished him from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he'd been taken. After he drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. So after Adam and Eve were thrown out of the Garden of Eden, there was an angel that was placed guarding the entrance back into the Garden of Eden with a flaming sword. Translated. So here's a flaming sword. It's not a very good translation, but it doesn't matter. Okay, flashing back and forth. Maybe it's a decent translation. Okay, with a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Okay, essentially, once they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden, that's it. They were not allowed back in. You cannot find your way back to the Garden of Eden. Then began the reality that we all know in this world. Okay, this being disconnected from YaHWeH, this being thrown out of the Garden of Eden, which was kind of like proverbially speaking, or metaphorically speaking, was like the womb of the mother. Okay, everything was perfect there, everything was good there, everything was safe there, everything worked there. We're thrown out into the real world, and we collectively of humanity, as humanity for the past X thousands of years, and each of us individually are now trying to find our way back to the entrance of the Garden of Eden, but we can't because it's blocked by the cherub with the rotating flaming sword. Okay? And what we're left with instead outside of the Garden of Eden is this: meaningless. Meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And that's, again, not a great translation, but it's very hard to translate the Hebrew here, what it says in the Hebrew. Okay? It's Havel Hevalim. Havalim, Amar Kohelet. Havel Hevalim, Akol Havel. Everything is, Havel is usually translated, they sometimes translate it as vanity. Really, what Havel is, it's like a wisp of air that disappears in a second. It's very hard to translate. Okay? It's kind of like something that you think you can grasp and you just can't grasp. That's what it really is. It's like a wisp of air and you try to grasp it and it's gone. Okay? It's a chasing after something you can never catch. And that's what the world is. That's what the YouTube guy flying his private jet or selling or developing land in Tbilisi, Georgia, that's what he's trying to sell, that he's found it. But meanwhile, King Solomon tells us that you can't find that key back. You can't get back to the Garden of Eden while you're in this life. You're stuck with this longing, with a sense of emptiness, with a sense of never being able to reach that place, but always trying. And so you become susceptible to YouTube channels like the ones I mentioned, or to all kinds of substance abuse. And when I say substance abuse, I don't necessarily mean alcohol and drugs. It could mean money. Okay, if I just become a millionaire or a billionaire. Okay, look at people like what's his face from Amazon. What's his first name again? Bezos. Forgot his first name. Doesn't matter. See, that's how meaningless he is in my life. Josh Bezos? No. Nick Bezos? John Bezos? Whatever. The Bezos guy. Okay. Right. Look what a jerk he is. I mean, you just hear him talk. He's just an a-hole. Like, just a narcissistic a-hole who only cares about money, and he doesn't even look happy in life. He doesn't look like he's found peace in life at all. Okay. But you look at another guy like I like to listen to, if you know Eckhart Tolle. Okay, he has money, but he looks like he's found peace in life, right? Because he hasn't put the money first. But Bezos guy, for some reason I can't remember his first name, right? Has all this money. He's bought into this lie that by getting more and more and more and more money, that this is going to be, he's going to find the key. He's going to find the path back to the Garden of Eden, even though the end of Genesis chapter 3 tells us that the angels are guarding it with the rotating flaming sword, and so no one can get back in there. And Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, Solomon speaks exactly about himself falling into this trap, falling into this lie. In many places throughout Ecclesiastes, but I'll read probably the most famous one, okay? So I'll just read the English to make it go quickly. Jeff Bezos, thank you. That's his first name. Okay. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good, right? He's going after material possessions, but that also proved to be meaningless. And again, it's not a good translation. Proved to be, the Hebrew there is havel, chasing after nothing. It's like, again, you're chasing after a wisp of wind and you can never catch it. It just dissipates. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. Here we go. Turn to alcohol. Okay? Embracing folly. Again, we'd have to look at the Hebrew to really see what it means there, but I just want to move ahead. My mind's still guiding me with wisdom. In other words, it's almost like where you do like a guided meditation or like a lucid dream, or where you say, okay, I'm going to go take LSD. By the way, I've never taken LSD in my entire life, but from what people tell me, the only drug I've ever done in my entire life is marijuana, and actually it taught me a lot. So maybe that would be a good example, right? I'm going to take marijuana. I'm going to smoke marijuana, but not just for the sake of, acting like an idiot, hanging around in the parking lot, acting like a jerk, but for the sake of trying to figure out what wisdom I can achieve from smoking the marijuana. Okay. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. So, right, he's going on a search for, like, how can he get rid of this existential feeling of emptiness? How can he get rid of this feeling of constantly chasing after things and never being able to catch it? Of having $1 million and then not being happy with the million, needing 2 and then 4 and then 8 and then 16. It's exponential. It doesn't just go up linearly. It doubles each time. Anyone who's ever been addicted to anything knows that, right? If you're addicted to alcohol, it's not 1 drink and then 2 drinks and 3 drinks. It's 1, then 2, then 4, then 8, then 16. And the next thing you know, you're rolling in the gutter, homeless. Okay. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labors, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet, when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless and a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Okay? We're going to stop there. There'd be a lot more to say, but we see that King Solomon wanted to assuage his emptiness, his existential emptiness, his pervasive feeling of what am I doing on this earth? I can never grab that golden ring. I can never reach the destination. I can just only keep on pining after it, chasing after it. So he had exactly the same feeling, because he's not fake. He's not like a rabbi. Not all rabbis are fake, don't get me wrong, but a rabbi who says, oh, just, study Gemara 10 hours a day and you will be so happy and blah, 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 right? No, he, the wisest man of all, is feeling that same emptiness and dealing with the real problems in life that we all have to deal with. And coming to some of the same conclusions. He's trying to see if physical gain, if accomplishment, if acquiring physical possessions are going to get rid of that underlying emptiness, just like ambulance chaser lawyer guy and Tbilisi land developer want to sell us that it will. So he did all that, and he had plenty of money, and he determined in the end that it didn't work. Everything was meaningless. Chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. So then what do? So we all feel like we're strangers in this world. We all feel like this is a mistake. There was a clerical error made. I was supposed to be sent somewhere else, and they sent me this planet Earth by mistake. Everything I do doesn't get rid of this feeling of emptiness, doesn't get rid of this feeling of longing. I still feel like I haven't achieved it. My time is running out, and he points that as well, right? Does he say that? Here. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. Right? Our time is very limited here. As you get older, you realize just how limited your time is on this earth. So what do? How do we get rid of this feeling? Well, I'm going to answer something, I guess, a bit radical. And I'm going to say that we don't. We're supposed to feel this. This is our lot. We're supposed to feel like strangers in this earth. We're supposed to feel like something isn't right here. We're supposed to feel like something's wrong with us. We're supposed to feel like we're always chasing after the wind that we can never catch. We're always chasing after the golden ring that we can never reach out and get. It's YaHWeH's way of showing us that we really don't belong here, that this place that we live in for 70 or 80 or 90 years is a temporary existence, and it's not meant to be a place where we find the answers. It's meant to be a place where we learn lessons, sometimes hard lessons, very hard lessons. And I think once we downgrade, I don't want to use the word downgrade, once we become realistic with our expectations as to what we're supposed to be doing here on this planet for the 70 or 80 or 90 years that we're here, then I think suddenly it relieves a lot of the pressure. And that's ultimately what Ecclesiastes kind of says. That's ultimately what King Solomon kind of says in Ecclesiastes. He kind of comes to the conclusion, like, oh, I'm never going to get rid of this feeling. I'm just going to have to live with it, right? It's like someone with chronic pain. Okay, at a certain point, they realize I can't get rid of the chronic pain. I just have to manage that chronic pain. And that's essentially what we have to do in our existence, in our life. And that's what eventually and essentially what Ecclesiastes, the conclusion that he comes to. Because what he eventually says is just enjoy the little things in life. Enjoy your wife, enjoy your children, enjoy your daily work, enjoy the pleasure of working hard and making whatever money you can honestly and ethically. Enjoy taking a hike, enjoy going on a vacation with your family, enjoy a glass of wine, enjoy a nice meal, enjoy all of the things in life that you're meant to enjoy, because that is your gift, it says in Ecclesiastes. Okay, this is the gift that YaHWeH has given us, but not to expect that in this life that we're going to get rid of that underlying existential feeling of emptiness, of angst. Because imagine if we did. Imagine if we did. That's what we all want. But imagine if we actually accomplished that. Then what more purpose would we have here on this earth? Right? It sounds silly, but it's true. If we actually did get rid of that, then there would be no more purpose for us to be here. Part of being here is to have that longing so that it urges us to figure out what's really going on, what's real and what's not, what's true, what's false, what's eternal, and what's temporary. And ultimately, Ecclesiastes says that what's eternal is, well, first of all, he says enjoying the little pleasures in life, because that's YaHWeH's gift to us. And then ultimately just realizing, Well, it says at the end of Ecclesiastes, right, that what's the exact words they use? Let me find it here. And by the way, some people think this was added on afterwards by scribes, but it doesn't matter. Now all has been heard. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So essentially what the end of Ecclesiastes says, again, assuming this wasn't added on, because it definitely is a little bit of a departure from what he's saying throughout. I actually like the fact that if it wasn't added on, then he just leaves us all hanging, because that's really reflects the feelings that we have on this earth, right? But if there is any sense of that peace, then it comes from introspection. It comes from the inside. As a good friend of mine says, happiness is an inside job. It doesn't come from chasing after things that we can never catch. It comes from acquiring wisdom. And Ecclesiastes speaks a lot about wisdom. Proverbs speaks a lot about wisdom. A lot. Okay. It's better than gold. It's better than silver. So wisdom allows us to assuage a little bit that feeling of emptiness. Love, if we have people we love and people who love us, because love is eternal, love is real. In fact, I heard someone say yesterday, everything else is fake, and I think it's entirely true. The only thing that's real and the only thing that's eternal is love. That helps. Wisdom helps. Being an ethical person helps. Helping other people, being kind to other people, being kind to animals, all of that helps assuage this feeling of what the heck am I doing in this bizarre place? How did I end up here? And how do I get out of here? So, okay, I'm going to stop there. And we're going to move on to Leviticus chapter 18. But I hope some of what I said not only makes sense, but really speaks to people, because I know that a lot of my friends are going through, some difficult times, and I hope maybe this can help. And read the book of Ecclesiastes. It really is, and understand it, and read it in the Hebrew if you can, or at least Hebrew with a good English translation, or with like a concordance or something like that, because it really is the greatest work of philosophy in the history of humanity. Okay. So, all right, let me put on a song, and then we will start with Leviticus chapter 18.
Alta, alta es la luna cuando empieza a esclarecer, y yo hermosa y sin ventura nunca llegué a nacer. Y yo hermosa y sin ventura nunca llegué mirar la mar, vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Es hermoso, dos taras tiene con él, la una que arrollada, la otra que echa sheshbesh, la una que arrollada, la otra que echa sheshbesh. Mi querido es alto y vano y una vara de expander. Mi madre hizo colada, lo metió a detener. Mi madre hizo colada, lo metió a detener. Na, 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 Dream, 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 dream. Dream, dream, dream when I want you. In my arms when I want you. And all your charms whenever I want want you, all I have to do is
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. I had an interruption, but everything's good now. Okay, so let's see. I gotta put that thingy back up. All right, so we're gonna dig into now Ecclesiastes. I'm sorry, Leviticus chapter 18. And let me share the screen. Okay, so we are in Ecclesiastes chapter, I keep on saying Ecclesiastes, Leviticus chapter 18. Okay. So Sam Soturi says the Tanakh tells us that no man should suffer the transgressions of another. Well, that's not exactly what it says. It says that no person should be, or the son should not be punished for the sins of his father. And that's meaning in a court case, meaning that, well, let's put it this way. There was a story in where I grew up in Queens, New York, of John Gotti, who was a real scumbag and is long dead now. But you know, the mafia guy, that by mistake, his neighbor, complete mistake, his neighbor was backing the car into the driveway and ran over John Gotti's son. And then in response, John Gotti killed his son. Okay, that's what the Torah is talking about. Now, I think he killed his son, if I remember the story correctly. So that's what the Torah is talking about. You cannot punish another person for something they didn't do. Okay, you can't punish the son of another person if they did it. So, but it's not speaking about on an existential level, or it's not speaking about God's dealing with human beings. It's speaking about court cases there. Anyway, I don't want to get bogged down. We could talk about that a lot more when we wrap around and get to Genesis. But let's talk in Leviticus. Let's go Leviticus chapter 18, or let's go back to Leviticus chapter 18. And we were up to verse, let's see. Yes, verse 19 is where we were. Okay, so we're going to start in Leviticus chapter 18, verse 19. And it says, verse 19, Ve'el isha, wa'el isha, benidat tum'ata, lo tikrav, li galoth er watha. So do not, and to a woman, when she is in the sickness of her uncleanliness, meaning her period, lo tikrav, and lo tikrav, well, lo tikrav li galot er watha, do not approach to reveal her nakedness. Basically, what this means is do not have sexual relations with a woman while she's in her period. And this is actually, believe it or not, considered one of the more serious crimes in the Torah. Having sex with a woman while she is while she's having her period, in the 7 days of her period. And we learned about the impurity, the kutis that a woman has, the tu'umah, the quote unquote ritual impurity that a woman has when she's in the 7 days of her period. She's considered ritually unclean. She's considered to have the kutis, and she could spread that to others at that time. Okay, so maybe we can even do a quick search on this. And I could find other places where it speaks about what a serious crime the Torah considers this to be. Let's see here. Ezra, Chronicles, Numbers, Ezekiel. We may not use the word Midah, what I'm looking for. Let's see here. 1 second. If we can't find it, then we won't. Numbers, Chronicles, Ezra, Lamentations, Ezekiel. Maybe it's Ezekiel 18. Let's check that out for a second. 18:6. So Ezekiel 18:6. Let me go to the English. So here, so this is Ezekiel 18 is actually a famous chapter where it speaks about people who repent and their sins should be forgiven, but we're not going to focus on that right now. But here is the allegory or the story that Ezekiel gives. Suppose there is a righteous man who does what is just and right. He does not eat at the mountain shrines or look to the idols of Israel. He does not defile his neighbor's wife or have sexual relations with a woman during her period. He does not oppress anyone, but returns what he took and pledged for a loan. He does not commit robbery, but gives his food to the hungry, etc. Okay? So we see that right up there at the top of this list, along with idol worship and along with adultery, is having sexual relations with a woman during her period in Ezekiel 18. Let's see if we can find another one. In Ezekiel 22. Let's see what we have here. Ezekiel 22:10. See how each of the princes of Israel who are in you uses his power to shed blood. In you they have treated father and mother with contempt. In you they have oppressed the foreigner and mistreated the father and the widow. You've despised my holy things and desecrated my Sabbaths. In you are slanderers who are bent on shedding blood. In you are those who eat at the mountain shrines and commit lewd acts. And you are those who dishonor their father's bed. And you are those who violate women during their period when they are ceremonially unclean. If in you one man commits a detestable offense with his neighbor's wife, another shamefully defiles his daughter-in-law, and another violates his sister, his own father's daughter, etc. Okay? So we see that right up there on this list of, and this is speaking about Jerusalem. Okay? Will you judge the city of bloodshed, then confront her with all the detestable practices? And it goes through a list of all of the horrible things that are being done in Jerusalem. And in this short list is, in you are those who violate women during their period when they are ceremonially unclean. Okay, so that is considered a pretty serious thing. Let's see if we can find another one. I think that's enough. Okay. Let's see maybe what Robert Alter has to say about that one. Let me bring him up. I forgot to bring him up before, so just give me a second here. So having relations with a woman while she's in her period is actually a pretty serious thing in the Torah. And we'll refer to it later on. We'll also see it. It's mentioned again. Okay, Leviticus 18. Oops, I forgot to do it this way. And we are in 1819. And let me see if there's any commentary on that. So 18. Nope. No commentary on that by Robert Alter. Okay, so let's move on. So now we are in verse 20. ואל אשת עמיתך לא תיתן שכבתך לזרה מטמאה בה. So this is adultery. This is the law against adultery. Literally it says ואל אשת עמיתך. So to the wife of your fellow man, your fellow Israelite, לא תיתן שכבתך. Do not lie down with her, or do not have sexual relations with her. Zara, shechvat zara. So shechvat zera is a phrase that we see again and again, or a number of times in the Torah, and this basically means to be very graphic about it. It means don't lie, don't release semen into her vagina, okay? Litamaba, and then become defiled by her. And this could mean, we know that when a man and a woman have sexual relations, both the man and the woman get the cooties, they become ritually impure. So this could be referring to that. We learned about that earlier in Leviticus, or this could be referring to moral impurity, to become morally impure by having sexual relations with your neighbor's wife, okay? The language here is very graphic. So shchavatcha means you're lying down, or Robert Alter says this means the releasing of semen, because shichva can also mean like layers, and I don't want to get graphic, but whatever. It's like explaining how the semen might look when it's released. Lizara, and lizara means seed or semen, okay? So, but at any rate, whether shchavtecha means you're lying down to release semen, or it means your layers of semen inside her, either way, it's talking about the same thing. This is speaking about sexual, vaginal intercourse with your neighbor's wife, and is, along with all of these other things that are mentioned, pretty bad. This is now, I think, the third time we saw it in Ezekiel 18, we saw it in Ezekiel 22, and we're seeing it here, that nidah, that having relations with a woman while she's in her period, is mentioned along with adultery. Again, showing that having relations with, I have to turn down the air conditioner here, it's a little bit too hot. Let me go. 1 second, please. Okay, showing the seriousness again of having relations with a woman while she's in her period. Now, without getting too graphic, I know that it's like a thing. There are some sick human beings out there that they love the idea of having relations with a woman, having sexual relations with a woman when she's in her period, right? There's even genres of pornography out there that deal specifically with that. And we have here in the Torah, again, an indication of just how serious a thing it is. You don't have relations with a woman when she's during a period, when she's having a period. First of all, she obviously cannot reproduce at that time, so there's no practical application to it. But then again, sexual relations do not always have to be for the sake of reproduction. They can be for pleasure, for bonding between a man and a woman. But at that point, anyone who's ever been married or had a girlfriend or is a woman or is now a man and used to be a woman, or God knows what goes on these days. Maybe you're a man who has a period, right? At any rate, in the United States, at any rate, anyone who's ever been around a woman when she's has a period knows that the last thing she wants to do at that point is have sexual relations. She's sick. She feels horrible. She's not emotionally in a good state at that point, not physically in a good state at that point, and so it's just the wrong time to do it. It's a disgusting thing to do. Okay, all right. Verse 21. And from your seed, in this case, seed meaning your offspring, your sons and daughters, do not give of your seed, do not take your seed and pass them to Molech or through Molech. Molech is an ancient god, god in the Near East, to whom various nations would sacrifice their children. And do not profane, do not disgrace the name of your God. I am YaHWeH. And here we get an I am Ani YaHWeH, I am YaHWeH. And we know that whenever you get an I am YaHWeH, YaHWeH really wants to say, listen, this is a serious one. They're all serious, but this one, like, I really want to point out, that this is bad news. Okay? Let's see what Robert Alter has to say about that. Spill seed. So now he's talking about verse 20, which he translates as, you shall not put your member into a fellow man's wife to spill seed, to be defiled through her. And Robert Alter says, spill is merely implied by the compact lizara for seed. The two defining elements for adultery indicated here with legal precision are penetration and ejaculation. Right. The potential consequence, of course, is that the woman could produce a child of dubious paternity, a particularly problematic condition in patrilineal society. So it should be pointed out we know that sexual relations with a married woman, with your neighbor's wife, is punishable by death. And what Robert Alter is pointing out here, and correctly, is that the only thing that's really punishable by death is actual sexual intercourse, leading to ejaculation, or actual sexual intercourse with your fellow man's wife. If you do other things, then the judges, I think, can certainly punish, but the punishment wouldn't be necessarily death. It might be lashes, it might be paying a fine, it might be jail, who knows. But the only way that you warrant the death penalty is if you actually have vaginal relations with your neighbor's wife, vaginal penetration, and it would imply here ejaculation. So what happens if you just have vaginal penetration but you don't ejaculate? I don't know. That's a tough one. I would say that in my opinion, is that would also be punishable by death. You don't do that to your neighbor's wife, your fellow man's wife. Okay, Molech is a Canaanite deity whose name suggests king, like Melech. The authentic form of the name may have been Malik, revocalized by the Masoretes to make the word resemble Boshet or shame. Oh, that's interesting. I never knew that. The most likely reference of the whole phrase is the child sacrifice, which in fact was widely practiced in the Syro-Palestinian sphere, as vividly attested by the vast number of children's graves uncovered at the site of Carthage, the Phoenician city in North Africa. And I actually visited. I actually visited in 2019. I visited Carthage, and I saw this place that they're talking about. It's called the Tophet, which is another word that comes from the Tanakh. And there are a whole bunch of children's graves there, which the Romans said was the result of child sacrifice that the Carthaginians carried out. And there's a big controversy as to whether the Carthaginians actually did carry out this child sacrifice, or it was just Roman propaganda against the Carthaginians, because the Romans and the Carthaginians were bitter enemies. They went to war 3 times in what's called the Punic Wars. Punic is the Roman word for Phoenician. The Carthaginians were Phoenicians, and in all 3 of the Punic Wars, Rome essentially ended up, well, by the end of the Third Punic War, Carthage was completely destroyed. Let's put it that way. Rome had completely defeated Carthage by the end of the Third Punic War. At any rate, Carthage is, in this day and age, it's located in Tunisia. It's right outside of the capital city of Tunis. And I spent a month in Tunis in 2019, right near Carthage, right in Tunis, right outside of Tunis. And if you ever get a chance to go there, it is really fascinating. And Tunisia is just a great place to visit. The people there were, I found, to be very friendly, very nice. It was very interesting. And there is even a small Jewish community there, although their status is threatened. There was a terror attack on Djerba Island down in the south of Tunisia, which is one of the 2 main places where Jews still live in Tunisia. There are about 1,000 Jews left in all of Tunisia. The other place being Tunis itself, where there are 3 synagogues and only 2 of them are in use. One is abandoned. At any rate, fascinating place. So it's not clear what he's saying here. It's not clear. There is a place in Carthage called the Tophet, which they claim was a place where the Carthaginians carried out child sacrifice. But it's not 100% clear. It might be just propaganda. It might have just been propaganda by the Romans against the Carthaginians. At any rate, neither here nor there. The verb pass over would then be an ellipsis for pass over through fire, used in other texts for this pagan practice. Some scholars, however, maintain that what was involved was a dedication ceremony in which the child was passed over the fire but not burned as a sacrifice. The metonymy, seed for child, links the slow with the preceding ones and those that follow, in which seed is in the sense of semen is deposited in a forbidden place. Right. So we have 2 uses of the word seed in the previous verse. When we're speaking about having sexual relations with your neighbor's wife, it said to spill or to lie down, literally shchavtecha lezara, to you're lying down for seed is literally the way it would be translated, but it means, again, having vaginal relations with your neighbor's wife, leading to the release of semen or seed inside her. And we have and seed, by the way, zera. Here we have lizara. And here in verse 21, we have the same word zera, okay, mizar acha, which means and, from your, and of your seed. So here's zera, and here's zera, but here zera doesn't mean semen. Here it means your offspring, just like you might say in modern English. These are my, well, I guess you don't say seed, but in Hebrew, offspring is, or seed means offspring. Okay, and that's the meaning here. So do not give your offspring, but Robert Alter is pointing out, and deliberately so, that the 2 different meanings here in verse 20, meaning semen, and in verse 21, meaning offspring, that link is made deliberate. It's, again, the Torah's way of linking things, of playing with words, of using words to bring out, or to use words in literary ways to make connections and to make the text flow in an interesting and memorable way. Okay, so that's what Robert Alter has to say about that. Okay, then we get to homosexuality, verse 22, and everyone seems to be totally focused on this as, like, I don't know, I guess people have a lot of latent homosexuality that they haven't come to terms with, or something like that. But everyone seems totally focused on this. I'll tell you what I think it means in a second. Ve'et zachar lo tishkav. So with a male, do not lie down. Mishkave Isha, according to the lyings down of a woman, the lyings down of a woman, it is an abomination. So what this means, and by the way, the word tishkav, when it's used in terms of sexual relations, tishkav always means, when it's speaking about a man and a woman, it means vaginal penetration. It specifically means that. Okay. So what this is saying, if I were to read this quite, I don't know if I'd say literally, but understanding what these words mean, the et zachar. So with a male, lo tishkav, do not penetrate or do not have penetrative relations. Lo tishkav mishkave isha, like the penetrative relations you would have with a woman, it is an abomination. Right? So just like we saw in the case of an adulteress or an adulterer, that what's really forbidden, what's punishable by death, is having vaginal relations and ejaculating semen into your neighbor's wife. That's punishable by death. So the same applies here for this law of what we call, or against what we call, homosexuality. What it really is saying is, do not penetrate a man the way you would penetrate a woman vaginally. And what this means, in my strong opinion, is it is speaking about in the world of male sexual relations, the analog of vaginal penetration is anal penetration. Okay, in the gay world, the going all the way is, there's no other place. I mean, there are other. I don't want to get too graphic here, but the going all the way within the world of male sexual relations means anal sex. And so what this is saying, essentially, this is a prohibition by death, as we'll see in another chapter. It doesn't mention here the penalty, but this is a prohibition against having anal sex with another man, against two men having anal sex. As for other sexual activities between males, then I think that's up for grabs. I don't really think the Torah, believe it or not, I'm going to say something radical, and I've been accused of many things for having this point of view, but it doesn't matter. I don't think the Torah really cares about other sexual interactions between males. The only thing it's concerned about is anal sex between males, because you do not excuse my French, but you do not F a man in the butt in the same way you would F a woman, because that is destroying his manhood. That is turning him into a woman. That's effeminizing him, basically. Okay. There's an article that I have, if I can find it, by a great biblical scholar. Let me see if I can find this here for a second. Just give me 1 second, please. And I'll read it. It's a very, very short article, but he makes this point as well. I have to turn the air conditioning back on. Let's see if I can find this. Oh boy. Let's see what I did with this. Let me do a search. 1 second, please. I think this is it. Yes, this is it. Okay, so let me bring this up. Let me just get some water to drink. second, please. So I don't want to get too into this topic because it's too controversial, but let's put it this way. There are a lot of people out there that are kind of like latent or have latent homosexual feelings that they've never come to terms with. So this becomes a really hot button. Is that the word? Hot button topic. And I don't really think it is a big topic, honestly. I think the Torah is clear on what it considers an abomination, and that's specifically anal sex between males. So this is David Daub. David Daub is, I think, one of the greatest biblical scholars of the late 20th century and early 21st century. And let's read what he has to say. And it's a very short article. Old Testament prohibitions of homosexuality. Let me just see here if it's coming up. Oh, it's not coming up. Why? I think I have it shared wrong. Hold on a second. Let's do this again. Stop screen. Present, share screen, window. Now it should come up. Okay. Yes. Okay, so this is David Daub. This is from the Collected Works of David Daub, Volume 3, blah, blah, blah. You see here. Okay, and the abstract is unconcerned about other types of homosexual conduct. The biblical prohibition in Leviticus focuses on anal intercourse. And this is what David Daub says. Again, he died in the early 2000s. An absolutely incredible biblical scholar. So Professor David Cohen, in a forthcoming article in Past and Present, convincingly demonstrates that the Athenian attitude to homosexual was far more subtle and variegated than would appear from even the most recent literature. Anal penetration, by the way, can I do this? I think so. 1 second here. Maybe I can. I'll just read, you follow along. Anal penetration, for example, was judged very differently from other kinds. A term his Greek sources use for it, to make a woman of a male, and that's exactly what I was saying earlier, suggests an idea to me concerning the well-known condemnations in the Old Testament, Leviticus 18:22 and 20:13. It may be of interest as an addendum to his important study. It is quite possible, I think, this is where I'm reading. It is quite possible, I think, that these statutes, again, Leviticus 18:22 and Leviticus 20:13, refer to anal intercourse unconcerned about the rest. Meaning, as I always say, and I've had gay people or even gay friends come to me and ask me about this issue, and I always say to them, just refrain from anal sex with other males. If you want to, again, I don't want to get too graphic, but, if you want to suck off the whole neighborhood, go for it, but just refrain from anal sex. I think it is quite possible, I think, that these statutes refer to anal intercourse unconcerned about the rest. For one thing, both speak of to lie with a male as if it were the lying with a woman. The expression occurs nowhere else. Surely there was a reason for choosing it in preference to the more ordinary ones like to uncover the nakedness, which we saw throughout Leviticus 18, to give one's lying, or the simple to lie. For another thing, in both chapter 18 and chapter 20, two separate ordinances are directed against sexual commerce with a beast, sexual intercourse with a beast, one addressed to men, the other to women. Yet in both, only one deals with homosexuality addressed to men. The silence about lesbianism, by the way, I'll tell you what I think about lesbianism in a second, contrasting with the thoroughness in respect of bestiality is an odd puzzle. In other words, why, when we see the verses on bestiality, why does it specifically say that a man should not have sexual relations with an animal, and a woman should not have sexual relations with an animal? Whereas in the case of the law here on homosexuality, It only speaks about a man having other relations with another man. It doesn't mention anything about a woman. This implies what David Daub is saying. This implies that there's no prohibition against lesbianism. I happen to agree with this. I don't think the Torah really cares about lesbianism, just as I don't think it cares about other sexual activity between males. The thing that it cares about really and only is anal intercourse between two males, because it causes effemination of the male that's being penetrated, and therefore the person who is being penetrated is allowing himself to become effeminated, and the person who's doing it is allowing this other person, is partaking or is causing the other man to become effeminated. And this is the essence of the prohibition, and that's why it's so serious and punishable by death. This silence about lesbianism, contrasting with the thoroughness and respect of bestiality, is an odd puzzle. It is solved if the practice envisaged is one inapplicable between women. It may be worth recalling that Leviticus 20:13 shows the diagnosis form reminiscent of medical instructions. In the latter, we find the symptoms, e.g., if a woman has an abnormal issue. Diagnosis, it is the achat disease, not achai disease, I'm not sure what that says there. 3, the treatment, apply japsis with honey. The Bible puts the facts. If a man lies with a male, lying with a woman, this is now talking about Leviticus 20, which we'll get to, designation, they have committed an abomination. No, this is Leviticus 18. The consequences to be drawn, they shall be put to death. I'm sorry, this is Leviticus 20. Just conceivably, the ancients had some sense of health risks attaching to this particular mode. True, the form provides only the thinnest evidence, since it is employed over a vast area, including cases right outside of medicine. So he's saying also there were health risks to anal sex. I don't think that's the essence there. Of course, there are, but I don't think that's the essence of why it's prohibited. It's prohibited because it's an abomination. Okay. Let's go on here. Support for my conjecture, meaning the fact that the prohibition is really only against anal sex between males, is furnished by the Assyrian laws. Paragraph 20, if a man has lain with his neighbor, he shall be lain with and be made a eunuch. So long as this is taken to have regard to homosexuality at large, it makes no sense. Why is only one of the couple punished? And what punishment is this, that he shall be lain with? It becomes intelligible as soon as we recognize its restriction to anal intercourse. Right? There's an actor and an acted upon. There's an active and a passive. It wouldn't make sense with other types of a sexual interaction or sexual horseplay between males. Okay, so you can use your imagination. The code threatens the dominant partner alone. He's to suffer first the despicable passive role. So if he made someone else take the passive role, then now and this is not the Torah, this is Assyrian law, then he now has that done to him. Then castration, in a way, a double unmanning. Apathic, we may presume, was sufficiently repaid by his degraded rank in the community. Paragraph 19 treats it as a serious defamation of any man without being able to prove it that he is lain with. The provision does not, let us observe, include the unproven assertion that a man lies with his neighbor actively. Such a statement would not differ from the unjust imputation of any other proper punishable crime, hence calls for no special ruling. Okay, so that's David Daub. And basically what David Daub is saying is that the only form of male sexual interaction that the Torah really cares about and is really concerned with is anal sex between men. So as I always like to tell my gay friends, and I have a couple, or gay people who come to me for advice, if you want to go suck off the whole neighborhood, go right ahead. Just try to refrain from anal sex with another male, because that's really what the Torah is concerned about. Okay, enough of that topic. Let's move on. Verse 23, B'chol behema lo titen shechavtecha l'tam'a ba. So here we have almost the same language as we have with adultery. Okay. Do not, here it says, with the wife of your fellow man, of your fellow Israelite, lo titen shchavtecha zara litam'a ba. Do not lie down with her to release semen and therefore become defiled, to be defiled by her or with her or through her. Here we have almost the same language. With any animal, lo titen shchavtecha litam'a ba. It doesn't say the word lizara, releasing of semen, but it's either implied or in the case of an animal, it's already enough just to, I think it's implied. I think it's the same phrase. It's just a shortened form here. Basically, this is speaking about for a male not to have vaginal sex with an animal. Okay. Now this raises the question, and what about other types of sexual interaction with an animal? Well, I find it personally disgusting, but I don't think it is I don't think it's punishable by death in the Torah. So if you have, I don't want to get graphic, that's not my intention here, but let's say you have your dog lick you or something like that there, then I don't think that's punishable by death. Okay. And it certainly doesn't mean sleeping in the same bed with, because if so, I think all of us animal owners would be dead meat, because I've slept in the same bed with my dogs over the years, my cats. That's all I've ever had is dogs or cats. Our friend here has probably slept in the same bed with her ferrets. To make a long story short, this is speaking about a male having vaginal sex with a female animal. And here, then we have the opposite. And this is one of the things that David Dow point out regarding male sexual intercourse or homosexuality, that we didn't have this in the case of when it speaks about homosexuality, meaning there was no explicit prohibition against lesbianism. But here, and a woman should not stand before an animal, to mate with it. This is the way they translate it here. I just want to look up this word for myself. I don't think it's a very common word. Okay, got it. 1 second. One second. Okay, so don't stand before a male to lie down with it, essentially. I'm sorry, don't stand before a woman shall not stand before an animal and then lie down before it. Tevel is another, usually translated as abomination, another form of that word, disgrace or perversion, they translate it here as. Okay, so here we explicitly have laws against a male having sexual intercourse with a female animal and a male human having intercourse with a female animal, and a female human having intercourse with a male animal. Okay? All right. And then that basically brings us to the end of the laws themselves for Leviticus 18. And now we just have summary sentences. So let's read through them. The basic bottom line is that the things that are punishable by death, according to the Torah, are anal sex between males, punishable by death for both he who takes the active and the passive part. If it's, again, consensual, if someone's raped, then obviously no judge would put someone to death if they were just raped. But if it's consensual, then the active and the passive partner in male anal sex are that both people are put to death. Lesbianism or other forms of male sexual contact are not of concern to the Torah. Again, the judges would judge such a thing, so maybe there's lesser punishment, but the Torah doesn't really seem to be concerned with it. In other words, it's not prohibited by the Torah, in my opinion. Yes, I know that's a radical stance, but that's what I think. Lesbianism is not prohibited by the Torah. It's not even mentioned at all. So I don't think there's any prohibition against lesbianism. There's really you cannot effeminate a woman because she's already effeminated. The issue is effemination of a male. With an animal, then it's speaking specifically about vaginal sex between a human and an animal, and whether it's a male human and a female animal, or female human and a male animal, it's prohibited, and as we'll see in Leviticus 20, punishable by death. Other lesser forms of sexual interaction between a human being and an animal, though I find it absolutely disgusting, is not, according to the Torah, in my opinion, punishable by death. Okay. And I really shouldn't do this, but there's a comedian. Okay, I won't even mention it. Okay, forget it. Okay, now we have summary sentences. So, verse 24. Any questions, any comments so far? Anybody? Okay. Al titamu b'chol ele. Do not defile yourselves. Do not become unclean. Do not become defiled b'chol ele. And again, this could mean moral impurity, or this could mean ritual impurity, getting the cooties. So some of these things, I mean, most of these things would actually give you the cooties, because sexual intercourse gives the cooties. Having relations with a woman or a woman who's in nidah, a woman who's having a period gives the cooties, has the cooties and gives the cooties. But I think this is speaking about moral impurity. Okay, let's go back to Robert Alter and see what he has to say about some of these things before we go on. Okay, with a male you shall not lie as one lies with a woman. With a woman, the explicitness of this law, the Hebrew for as one lies, and plural construct noun mishkaveh, bedding, used exclusively for sexual intercourse, suggests that it's a ban on anal intercourse and intercrural. I don't even know what that means. I'll have to look that up. And intercrural intercourse. Let's look that up. Between the thighs. Practice of intercrural. Huh? Intercrural intercourse. I don't even know what that means, but we'll just stick with it meaning anal intercourse. The latter often practiced by the Greeks. Other forms of homosexual activity do not seem of urgent concern. So here, Robert Alter is agreeing with David Daub. Other forms of homosexual activity do not seem of urgent concern. Torah doesn't care. You want to go suck off your neighbor? Go for it. Not something I would do, especially if you've seen my neighbor. But if that's your thing, then the Torah actually does not even really care. The evident rationale for the prohibition is the wasting of seed, in what the law appears to envisage as a kind of grotesque parody of heterosexual intercourse. I don't agree with that. I don't think it's the wasting of seed. I think it's the effemination of a male. When a man gets effed, that effeminates him, and a man is not allowed to be effeminated. Lesbianism, which surely must have been known in the ancient Near East, is nowhere mentioned, perhaps because no wasting of seed is involved, although the reason for the omission remains unclear. There is scant textual evidence to support the apologetic claim of some recent interpreters that the ban on homosexual congress is limited to the preceding list of incestuous unions. So that's irrelevant almost. One may apply here the proposal of Mary Douglas that this is a culture that likes to keep lines of categorical distinction clear. No human-beast couplings are allowed. In contrast to the imaginative freedom on this topic of Greek myth, and any simulation of procreative heterosexual intercourse by the insertion of the male member in an orifice or fleshy crevice of another male is abhorrent. Okay. All right. A woman should not present herself to a beast. Robert Alter says about this, a literal sense of the verb is stand before, which in other contexts can mean to perform service, but in fact she is crouching with the posterior toward the male beast, as the verb here for coupling, rava, indicates, since it is cognate, possibly via the Aramaic with ravatz, the verb used for an animal's crouching. It is puzzling that no mention is made in the present context of acts of bestiality by males, though in chapter 21 this is defined as capital offense. What do you mean? Maybe I read that wrong. Hold on a second. No, it does. I don't know what he's talking about. All right. Anyway, let's go on and finish off Leviticus 18. So I want to end the study soon. So so do not defile yourselves morally and also perhaps ritually. With all of these things, incest, male, anal sex between males, vaginal sex between a human and an animal, vaginal sex with an animal, having relations with a woman when she's in her period. Because with all of these, the nations that I am about to send away from you, that I'm about to chase out before you, meaning the Canaanite nations, the nations living in the land of Canaan, all of those nations defile themselves with these things. So don't be like them. Remember, this chapter started off by saying, don't be like, where was it? כמעשה ארץ מצרים אשר ישבתם בה לא תעשו, כמעשה ארץ כנען אשר אני מביא אתכם שמה לא תעשו. Don't do like the Egyptians where you came from, and don't do like the Canaanites where you're going. Okay, verse 25. ותתאמו ותטמע הארץ. If you do these things, then it defiles the land. Okay, so I've advised people who've come to me who've asked me about homosexuality in the Torah, and I've said to them, and they've said to me, what does the Torah care, or why does God care what two consenting adults do between themselves? Right? The consenting adults, what does it matter? Here we have the answer. It defiles the land. These things defile the land. Okay, when they occur in the land of Israel or any land, it in a sense makes the land become unclean. Ve'efkod avona aleha, and I will recompense or revisit or punish. Efkod is a very difficult word to translate. Here they translate it as visit, the punishment upon. I will remember, or I will eventually pay back the land, okay, for being defiled, or I will take punishment out on the land if it becomes too defiled. And the land will vomit out her inhabitants, its inhabitants. Speaking about now the Canaanites are going to be vomited out, in theory. Remember, the Israelites don't finish off the job. But in theory, the Canaanites are going to be vomited out because of these abominations and others. But these abominations are mentioned here specifically. And if you do this, Israel, then you're going to be vomited out. Of course, that in the end happens, not only for this, but other things such as idol worship, spilling of innocent blood. Verse 26, Shamartem atem et chukotai ve'et mishpatai. And you shall keep my statutes and my judgments. V'lo ta'asu mikot avot to'avot. And do not do any of these abominations. Whether it's a native-born Israelite or a ger, someone who joins the nation of Israel. Okay, pointed out explicitly here, the native-born and the ger. We see that in certain places where it's pointed out explicitly that such and such set of laws applies to both the native-born and the ger. 27. Because the people of the land, meaning the people who are living in the land of Israel right now, the Canaanites, because the people living in the people of the land, the people living in the land now did all of these abominations. The land that is before you, meaning the land that you're going into. And the land became defiled. Meaning that's why they're being removed from the land. God waited. The sin of the Amorites is not yet full, as it says in Genesis chapter 15. Okay, God waited for the Canaanites to keep on sinning and sinning and sinning, and at a certain point, the cup was full, and Yahweh said, "That's enough. Now you're out, and the Israelites are in." So that so the land became defiled by the Canaanites. So don't allow the land to vomit you out by defiling it, by defiling her, meaning the land. As it vomited out, in this case, meaning is about to vomit out, the nation that is before you, meaning the Canaanites. Verse 29. Because anyone who does any of these abominations, who commits any of these abominations, their souls, or they themselves will be cut off from mikerev amam, from the midst of their people, meaning excision. They will no longer. It's not often clear what Karaite means, but the most basic meaning would be they're to be excised. They're not to be considered any more Israelites. Mishmarti, and keep my my charge. The vilti asot mechokot atoevot asher ne'asu lifnechem. Keep my charge, and don't do by not doing these laws, mechokot atoevot, these abominable laws, or these abominable habits, or these abominable customs that are being done before you, meaning by the people in the land of Canaan, and do not defile yourselves morally through them. Ani YaHWeH Elohechem, I am YaHWeH your God. We sum up with the Ani YaHWeH, right? I am YaHWeH your God. Again, showing who's saying it here, how important it is. Whenever we have this phrase Ani YaHWeH or Ani YaHWeH Elohechem, then it's pointing out, like, it's giving authority. It's giving the sense of authority behind the prohibition. It's showing really, like, remember who's telling you this. I, YaHWeH, I'm telling you this. Okay? Any questions, any comments? Let's read a little bit more here on the Robert Alter, and then I think we'll finish up. The men of the land, perhaps the Hebrew Anshe also includes women, as the taboo in verse 23 suggests. That's bestiality, intercourse between a woman and a male animal, but it's surely meant to pick up the initial "no man of you" in verse 6. What's it say here? Let me just see. It's 27. Verse 6 is ish ish. Okay, fair enough. 29, the person who does it. The Hebrew actually switches from the initial singular "whoever does" to the plural, the persons who do it, but the singular is used in the translation because of the requirement of consistency of English usage. Meaning, what Robert Alter is saying here is that the Torah can switch back and forth between gender and number almost fluidly, but when he does the translation, he keeps it in the singular, even though technically it switches from the singular to the plural, because in English you can't just switch back and forth between number or between gender. Sometimes you'll see a mismatch between or what seems like a mismatch in biblical Hebrew between a noun and an adjective that modifies it, or a pronoun and a verb, and also number can switch back between the plural and the singular kind of fluidly. But Robert Alter is just saying that in his translation he keeps it singular because that doesn't work in English. It may work in Hebrew, but it doesn't work in English. And that's the end of Leviticus chapter 18. You give me a second. I'm going to turn off the AC, open the doors here. One second, please. 1 second, please. Okay. So that's the end of Leviticus chapter 18. Leviticus 19, we're going to speak about idolatry, and then a bunch of, I guess, kind of famous laws. We'll get to it next week. So Leviticus 19 is kind of nice, easy, accessible. It's not easy. Torah is never easy, but kind of very accessible. The rest of Leviticus is much more accessible, as I've mentioned a bunch of times. In 20, we go back to incest, essentially, and other types of sexual immorality, and then so on and so forth. We are approaching the end of the book of Leviticus. We're approaching the end of the book of Leviticus. We still will probably be on it another, I would say, I'm going to guess around 2 months, because we're taking our time here. But we're coming kind of towards the end of the book of Leviticus, and we've certainly gotten through the difficult parts. I would also say that Leviticus, in my opinion, is the hardest book of the Torah in terms of the technicality of its content, because it deals with the sacrifices, the sacrificial system. It deals with the system of ritual purity and impurity. It's very technical. And so it's kind of smooth sailing from here. The rest of Leviticus is not, except for some exceptions here and there, is not as technical as some of the parts we've covered. Numbers is also less technical. And then Deuteronomy is mostly rhetoric with some laws, but it's restatement of laws mostly, with some additions or some clarifications or some augmentations. But it's mostly restatement of the laws we've seen before, plus a lot of rhetoric. And then that's it. So we'll get there slowly but surely. As I mentioned a bunch of times, it's okay. It's okay, Mariana. Call me a rabbi. As I've mentioned a bunch of times, we've disconnected now. I think for a couple of months we've been doing it, not trying to keep to the rabbinical Parashat Shavua. Maybe if I have more time one of these days, I was thinking of maybe starting each lesson, or I'm sorry, each study by reading the rabbinical Parashat Shavua. But that's opening a can of worms, because I know myself, I won't be able to just read it without commentary. I'll have to start commenting on it, and that'll open a whole can of worms. But at any rate, we'll see. We'll play it by ear. And that's all I've got to say. That's all I got for today. I hope you enjoy the study. I think this stuff is really interesting. I think that when we look at the laws that we saw in Leviticus 18 of sexual morality, we have to understand that the relation to sexuality was very different, I think, in ancient times, in the ancient Near East, than it is in the modern West, especially in the modern West of the 20th and 21st century. It was more like what you do rather than what you are. So today, if someone considers themselves, someone may consider themselves either homosexual or heterosexual. And in most non-Western societies, even today, or pre-Western societies, it's not the way it really was. Everyone basically essentially got married, had children, had a wife or multiple wives, children, concubines, all this kind of stuff. And so their activity, if it was with other males, it wasn't a way to identify themselves. They didn't think of themselves as either heterosexual or homosexual. It was something they did. It was the action that was important. It didn't constitute an identity. And you'll see this to this day in a lot of non-Western societies, like in Muslim society. Believe me, there's plenty of homosexual activity, what we would call homosexual activity, that goes on. But yet almost all of these people end up getting married, having children, etc. So it's something they do, not something they are. It's a different attitude towards sex. The Torah is definitely not anti-sex. It's not an ascetic document at all. King Solomon had what was it, 300 wives and 700 concubines. David had a bunch of wives, right? These people were having a lot of sex. And so the Torah is not prudish or anti-sex or ascetic, not in the least. But the laws that it does set down, it says, go do your thing, but don't cross the red lines. Don't do things that are just unacceptable or disgusting or abominations, toivot, as the Torah may use. Okay, but in the Western society, like the United States, Europe, South America, which has been so heavily influenced by Christianity, which is essentially an ascetic religion, and post-Christianity, which is either ascetic or a rebellion against asceticism. So you get basically sluts running around, where, the sexual freedom of the 60s, etc., is a rebellion against the asceticism, the overstated asceticism of Christianity. So there's no balance there. The Torah has a balance, which is basically, yes, sexuality, sex is there to be enjoyed, but just don't do anything really gross. Don't do anything that crosses any red lines that anyone with half a brain wouldn't do unless they were, a sick F, to put it bluntly. So that's it. That's Leviticus 18. We covered incest. We covered homosexuality, lesbianism, or didn't cover lesbianism because it's not in there. Bestiality, having relations with a woman in her period. And that concludes Leviticus chapter 18. So I think we're going to end it here. Hope you enjoyed the study. I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov wherever you are in the world. And we will see you again. Be'ezarat YaHWeH. We'll see you again next week. This is Melech Ben Yaakov broadcasting this week from Tekoa in the Judean hills near Bethlehem in what some may call the quote-unquote West Bank. That's where I happen to be this Shabbat. Next Shabbat I'll probably be up north, back in the Golan Heights in Katzrin. But here I am this week in Tekoa. So I wish you all, wherever you are in the world, a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov. We'll go out with a song or two, and we'll pick it up again next week. Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov.
עזרי עם השם עושה שמיים וארץ אל ייתן למות רגליך אל ינום שומרך הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, שא עיני אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל השם שומרך השם צילך על יד ימינך יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, הניתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות,